Hey, it's Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. All right, we're back in the RV again, and it is nice and cozy yet again, even though the temperature has warmed up quite a bit this beautiful winter day. So I'm sitting here with my co-host and cohort, KC Smith. What's going on, dude?
Man, not a lot. I'm wearing shorts today, and I'm always happy when I get to wear shorts. I'm a shorts kind of guy.
You got your South Texas camo
That's
on,
right,
too,
dude.
man.
I'm ready. I'm ready for that brush country.
Oh, yeah. You're going this weekend, right?
Yeah. It's getting up close. So heading down to the hill country, going to eat a little barbecue, a little Mexican food, and hang out on the ranch and do that. It's going to be really wet, so we'll see how it goes.
I really don't like hunting in the wet and rain, mainly because I hate all the mud that gets on everything.
Oh yeah, it's bad. Well, out there it's not as muddy because it's all that red dirt sand. So, but you end up with like flash floods out of nowhere. Like when it rains an inch out there, it literally floods. Mm-hmm. It's nuts because there's nowhere for the water to go because it's all rock. You know, It's kind of weird, but I don't know. We'll see. And down there too, like the thing about that is it's kind of more that arid desert country where no matter even if you're getting a warm spill, it's going to be cold at night. So wet and cold is never fun.
No, it's not. I mean, I don't know. I guess there's something that just kind of, I'm a little bit OCD just about a few things. Like I have these weird little things that kind of get on my nerves or drive me crazy, and I'm sure everybody does, but maybe I'm just weird. But
we know that.
Well, okay. But like getting mud on all my like the bottom of my pants, and then like getting in a truck and trying not to get it all on the floorboards, and it just accumulating throughout the weekend, like that just kind of drives me crazy sometimes, man. So anyway, that's a whole different side note. You are in shorts today. It's 61 degrees outside here in Northeast Texas, and it's supposed to get warmer tomorrow. It was 42 when I checked earlier this morning, but I'm pretty sure it was a lot colder than that last night. So we have pretty good swings here for sure, and we've had a good cold front. But today we are going to talk about we're going to try to make this a lot shorter than the last episode, and we promised that in the last episode. So we're basically going to talk about a trip that we took this weekend onto some public land here in Texas, and then a couple things about what are going on with us, and what's going to happen in the next few weeks, I guess, with us, and then probably bring on a guest hopefully soon, and kind of start to really dig into maybe some tips and tactics, and not just so much stories and stuff like that. Which, I mean, we may have some tips today. I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll
see. We'll have some philosophy.
That'll probably happen, I'm sure. So that's what we're looking at today. So there was something I was going to hit on. Oh, I wanted to make sure and say, throw out a big thanks to Sitka Gear for just believing in what we're doing and allowing us to use their incredible products that they put a ton of hard work and research into. And you can tell, man, when you wear it. I mean, KC I got him believing now.
Oh, yeah. I'm a believer in the sickness, you could say.
He's starting to get sick for it. Let's keep that one going.
Yeah, for sure. So on that, we got out this weekend and in our Sitka Gear and got after some stuff and did some a little bit of hog hunting that was fair to poor, you could say. We didn't run up on near as many pigs as we kind of thought or hoped, but we kind of got distracted with some whitetail stuff, which is really easy to do for us.
Probably will continue to happen throughout the rest of this year, too.
Yeah, for sure. So I, me and Tyler went down for, I guess, really your first experience of trying to like target hogs on public land.
Yeah,
really, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. I have been out one time doing that by myself, and it was kind of half-hearted. It was more just the same thing. Like it was kind of like I want to see what this property looks like, and in hopes of maybe getting on some deer eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what we did on Saturday. Really, we were Like, I mean, you may not have known it because I know the area way better than you do, and I was kind of showing you that section we were on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of knew that it wasn't our best chance to see hogs,
right?
But it was our best chance to accomplish a lot of things, which is scout for deer, cover a lot of territory, see some cool country, and also maybe getting some hogs. And we had, I mean, I guess 2 encounters, really, right?
Yeah, we were,
and never saw the pigs, but I mean, you can always tell whenever you jump hogs as opposed to deer. You know, the hogs are going to make a couple grunts and kind of a huff sound whenever they spook, and then they're going to take off.
Dude, that first huff sound
kind of creeps you out a little
bit. Creeps you out, man.
Yeah, it's
cool.
cool.
We heard was like, it was closer than I thought, really, and it was like, I don't know, maybe it wasn't closer, but it was loud, and like for the sound that it was almost like one of them, like you said, it was like a huff. It wasn't like big like diaphragm vocalization is what it didn't sound like. It sounded more like a wind pipe vocalization.
It's almost like them clearing their throat real hard. That's what it sounds like.
But it was like, but it had like the diaphragm like gut in it, you know, like it was deep. And it's like, do
spooky.
Not mess with me kind of deal.
And then that's the first hog we encountered. And then, okay, so I have, you know, a pretty good background with pigs, and I kind of think both of what we kind of came up on were probably single bores that were bedded, and we spooked with sound because it's so dang dry. You know, we had that cold weather, dropped all the air all the moisture out of the air, made all the leaves crunchy as all get out, and
no wind.
Yeah,
really.
No wind at all.
It was so quiet up back in there.
Hogs aren't. We had the wind on them. That was the weird thing because normally I always just kind of think of, okay, if you don't get a hog's nose, then you're pretty much going to be able to have a pretty good encounter. But it's so thick there, and it was so noisy. I think that's what got him. But that first one, he picked us out, gave us his grunt and wheeze or whatever you want to call it, and I was like, hey, let's go try to flank him and see if we can't, you know, get around on the other side. Well, I mean, we went exactly where we thought the sound would have been. He was gone. And that's the weird thing about pigs is, like, you know, deer, they kind of, even whenever they're taking off, they almost meander and take the path of least resistance. Hogs are like a bullet shot out of a gun. They're just going to go straight and go through some stuff, you know, and I think that's why we had a hard time catching up to that one because... And we didn't hear him for very long. You know, we're like, oh, he must still be there. He must have just took a V-line straight directly the other direction from us.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. He was they're making a lot of noise, or they were, whatever. But there was definitely a lot of noise in there, and I think that the second one was even less. I mean, it was just like basically we heard or you heard them moving, I guess, and it was like. Pretty quickly, we weren't hearing them anymore, you know?
Yeah, well, I wasn't quite prepared to chase at that point in time. I don't know if you remember how that all went.
Yeah, we were a little tired at that point, among other things.
I was tired, and I was in the process of fixing to try to use the bathroom in the woods, and then we heard the hog take off.
Yeah, it was not an opportune moment to hear a hog. But,
no, it wouldn't. That was after that was working on mile 4 or 5 right there.
I would imagine probably mile 4. Yep. We did. We went about 2 miles in, back in. I guess that's on a pretty straight line, right? Or is that
essentially we followed the border of the public land, which
I'm saying like line. I didn't actually put it together, but is it straight line 2 miles, or is it just if you follow the border, that's the way?
Well, it's about straight line 2 miles. Yeah. So if we follow that border, you're probably adding an extra quarter at least, if not more.
And we zigged and zagged and checked out all kinds of stuff and went around what we thought were bedding areas and made circles, and so there's no telling how much mileage we did. I wish I had like some kind of a Fitbit or something on me that I could show me like how many steps I took or how far I'd been or something. I know they have watches that can tell you that pretty accurately. I guess probably Garmin or somebody makes those. But
we need to check on some of those hunting apps and see if they have like Trail Tracker or whatever.
That'd be cool.
Like that. I didn't even think about that.
You put your phone in your pocket and it tells you how far you're going. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, it'd be pretty snazzy. Except my phone dies after about 15 minutes. So.
Yours was on airplane mode the whole time we were back there.
It still died, but whatever.
He's telling his wife, he's like, "Hey, as soon as we go in, literally, it's like so cold that he's like, my battery might die even though I have like 100%." So he's like, telling his wife, "Hey, if anything goes wrong, text Tyler or call him."
That's right.
See you in 8 hours.
Yeah. And guys, it's always a win-win situation when you can do that anyways, even if your phone doesn't have a bad battery. Just like, hey, I'm going to put it on airplane mode because, for some reason, whatever you can come up with.
Yeah, so that I don't get 10 calls.
She won't summon you out of the woods.
Yeah. No, it was definitely very cold when we started out that morning. All the water was frozen around there, and ice and snow on the ground from the day before. It got down into like low teens that night, I think, and it never really got above 36 or so, I think.
Yeah.
That day or something.
There's still a lot of snow on the ground in the shadows. Just in the sunlight. It's the only place it really thawed. And and the lake here was still frozen over this morning. You know what I mean? Like that ice had never melted, and there still might be some out there.
Which never happens.
No, never happens here. I bet some of that ice out there was probably 2 or 3 inches thick.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think in East Texas that a main body of water can freeze over like that.
Yeah, it was. I've seen it do it around the shallows before, but it's usually gone next day.
Oh yeah.
As soon as that sun comes out and it hits 40 or whatever, the ice breaks up. But that was not the case this time around.
And to get it back to the hog hunting, we really thought that. In my experience, hogs aren't like deer. They don't have a full body coat of hair. They have a hard time conserving heat, almost like we do, but not quite to the extent. We're completely hairless mammals, but they tend to try to conserve as much heat as they can. Stay in big groups or whatever when it gets cold like that, and get all up in the grass, make hog beds and stuff like that. And we really didn't find that much of that. I kind of thought that we'd find some pretty big groups and stuff that day, but oh well.
We found hog sign everywhere,
there
though.
Really was.
It was all in there, and we spent, I guess, a long time, between probably mile and 3/4 or mile and 2 miles back in straight up just river bottom type stuff.
Hoggy business.
Just river bottom flats, and there was a ton of hog sign, and I just kept thinking surely we're going to run into them, bunch of them in the grass, and just didn't, man. I don't know what the deal was.
Oh well, just sometimes they're just not there. I don't put as much effort into patterning hogs as we do whitetails. And not to disrespect the animal or anything, but it's just, I don't know. There's just so many of them that you think you can go and, just find some. And we find the sign and stuff, and we're probably just right off. And we found some sign that was really fresh. Since the snow, but we just didn't run up on them. It probably had to do with how noisy we were being. We weren't being the most stealthiest of creatures because we were really trying to cover the country.
Well, yeah, especially once we got back in there 2 miles deep and we started thinking, okay, well, it's probably about time to head back, we really kind of started moving a little bit quicker, for the most part, and not really caring so much about, and our feet got tired, our legs got tired, and our feet were dragging. And if you drag your feet in Texas, you're going to get vines and briars and thorns, and it's going to be nuts.
Briars are bad. There's 2 or 3 types of briars. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
There's the kind that you always think about, or they might be called a bramble some places or whatever, but there's the regular green briar with the thorns that are 2 inches apart. Well, then there's those souped up ones that look like porcupine spines, and you just all over up and down the things, and I've never got stuck by one, but they look real scary, so I don't want to get none of that on there.
Yeah.
And then, make matters worse, I seem to be having a bigger problem with this than you did. Probably just because you're so spry. But that when that snow started melting, the ground would look dry. But then as soon as you stepped, it was like a little 1/4 inch of mud layer that was just slick as all get out.
Yep.
And I think it's because I was walking in front most of the time and just was you're
busting
dummy.
brush for me.
Yeah, exactly. It was okay, Tyler, there's a slick spot. Watch out for it.
Man, there was one time I was kind of going downhill in this little ditch, and I started losing it, and I got a football injury, bad back, and it's in the middle, and it's a little slip disc, I think. I don't know, but anyway, I started losing it. So obviously, your first instinct is to lean back, and try to gain your balance, and I did, but it was not at the expense of a nice little sharp pain shooting up my back, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. Now, I think that was the same place. kind of a interesting testament to Sitka Gear. Like, okay, I've been wearing the Equinox pant a lot, and I like that pant. It's pretty form fitting, which is, it sounds kind of girly to say, but like, when you're walking through the woods, exactly, athletic fit, and when you're walking through the woods, you just don't want to be flopping around. You don't like it. It's not like a pair of Jinkos, you know what I mean? Or like, you want some pretty tight-legged pants. And
they're basically skinny jeans.
Yeah, basically. No, they work well. It's kind of right in that perfect middle spot. But so they haven't been tearing up too much in the briars, and it's been,
which I was surprised.
Yeah, me
because
too.
like they feel thin, and they're made of like a lightweight material. They're not like a denim, obviously. And I would have thought like all that. I mean, we busted briars a lot. I mean, like 5 or 6 miles of busting briars, pretty much.
Yeah,
and I was surprised.
They held up pretty good. I mean, there was like hardly. I mean, there's no runs in them at all, or anything. It didn't really cause an issue. So that's kind of the thing, is if you can forget about an article of clothing once you put it on, it's successful. You know what I mean? And that's essentially what we did. Like it never caused me grief or anything. But the cool thing was whenever you're talking about the spot where your slip disc about double slipped on you or whatever, like I actually slipped down and hit my butt right there, and that was some pretty squishy mud. And I got up. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just got disgusted."
Yeah, we were starting to get pretty close to the truck, so you were thinking I'm about to have to sit down in my seat with black river mud all over me.
I reached back and there was no mud on me. Like, I don't know if this is like just a byproduct of good gear, or if they actually design this way, but it didn't. None of the junk that I slipped down in stuck to my pants, which was super
dirt
cool.
And water resistant or something. Yeah,
exactly. And I can't ever remember that being a advertised point. But, essentially this is designed to stand in a tree stand and be comfortable in a tree stand for. So I don't know if it's ever something they,
Yeah, it's their whitetail gear. So all that stuff is designed to be just sitting in a deer stand, but to have it on and walk that many miles and still feel good about it is actually
And that stuff looked awesome in that frosty, leafy winter dry stuff, like that. It just was cool.
The hogs definitely didn't see it.
No, the hogs didn't see us.
Just heard us.
Yeah, but so that's the hog part of the experience. But as far as whitetails go, like we kind of made some ground.
Yeah, definitely. I was Casey had been in here to hang a camera a month and a half ago.
26th of November. So whatever that was.
About a month and a half almost. And found some interesting things while back there.
Yes.
And so for that reason, wasn't really able to hang the camera exactly where he wanted to. And I think as a byproduct, the camera pull was not our favorite.
It was kind of lackluster. Well, I mean, we had deer on camera. There's a ton of hogs on that, which was surprising. So where I set this camera up was on a ridge line, which you might be thinking, okay, big deal. Well, this is river bottom country, or creek bottom at least, where we were at.
And also everything like east of, especially like the Westaplex, like there's not. I mean, it's rolling. It's not really like ridge type. Like there's just not many ridges.
No, what'd you say, Westaplex?
Yeah, like Weatherford or whatever. I mean, once you start getting out west, you may run into some stuff.
Yeah,
but I mean,
I got you.
I mean, still like the main like when people talk about ridges and deer hunting and stuff, they're mostly like people up there in Iowa, Wisconsin, whatever else, and so we don't. This ridge is not really probably comparable to even some of those ridges, but I mean it's a legit ridge.
Yeah, it's
for us, like we just don't have that anywhere. In the eastern half of the state, really, especially. No. I mean,
yeah, and it was. I mean, the first time I found it, like you weren't there when I found it, but I took you back, and it's like 25-foot terrain change within. I mean, it's 45-degree angle up.
Yeah,
it's legit a ridge.
You don't want to walk up it.
No.
Yeah,
and it's cool because the actual foliage changes there too, because you've got that river bottom ash and that. I don't know, cottonwoods and stuff down on the bottoms with a few board arcs, and then you walk up the ridge and it is oak and cedar.
Yeah,
up on top.
Yeah, it's a legit. There's an edge there.
Yeah,
and not just in the matter of like a big hill or ridge, but like in also the like I said, the foliage and the trees.
And we
stuff.
saw deer there, which was cool. We hadn't really talked about that, but we saw
the only deer we saw.
Yeah, the only deer we saw were right there at that edge, and it was a group of does who weren't really spooked by us. I don't think. I think they were just moving, and they were kind of working that edge down, but they were in the bottom part. You know, they weren't up on top of the ridge. But on the card pool, I mean, I had like 1 3.5-year-old buck, which I mean, he's a decent deer, and I mean, there's a lot of guys that love to shoot him, and you know, I'm not saying I'm too good to shoot that deer myself, but you know, I'm really looking for the big mature deer to give me a reason to go back in there that far. Well, I mean, you know, that's kind of the deal.
You definitely passed the deer that's bigger than him this year. You know,
we did, which, you know, maybe I'm an idiot, but I don't know. I just kind of got to the point where I want to shoot mature deer.
Yeah, know? and it can happen out there. We kind of proved it this year out there. So and knowing that. I mean, yeah, you got to set you got to have goals somewhere.
Exactly, you know, and that's just where we're at. We want to shoot big mature deer on public land, and it's possible, you know. But you know, it still was a cool card pool, you know, and even a bad card pool is
intel.
It's a good pool because you figure out, hey, the hogs use this like crazy. You know, there's not a lot of deer movement through here. This is not a prime location, even though it looks primo. And it could be, in that spot, it could be the difference in 30 yards on camera placement, too. You know, so, like, it's still worth going back and checking out some more. Maybe once a few things get cleared up that are down there, that's kind of interesting. But,
one good thing, one thing I think that you're kind of trying to say here. I was listening to a podcast today, actually, with Jeff Sturgis, and he was kind of giving advice on hunting the big woods up in like I guess Wisconsin, and per a question. So anyway, we kind of have that like big woods aspect in a lot of the eastern half of our state, and so that question was very particularly interesting to me. But he said a lot of it is about figuring out, you know, eliminating ground and figuring out, okay, well, he said you've got a 10,000 acre tract here, and 9,000 of it may be old timber, oaks and hardwoods of all kinds, you know, and you may have, you know, another 1,000 of it that is 500 of it is like a beaver pond in a little area where there's some scrub stuff or whatever. He said that's a change. That's the difference. So you can eliminate a huge chunk by knowing that that vast expanse. There's no edges. There's no because a whitetail's going to need more than just one habitat to be in. So anyway, that's kind of what I think you're trying to say, I feel like, is like if nothing else, we eliminated that area. Yeah. And it may be only 30 yards. We go back and hang a camera and find out, you know.
What we eliminated right there, and it's pretty specific and it's cool, is that the top of the ridgeline is not the deer travel area. But that doesn't mean that the bottom isn't. And that's kind of where we saw those deer, you know.
Yeah. And so this also, sorry if I cut you off real quick. This also may sound weird to a lot of deer hunters out there because even guys that hunt private around here and never really been on public, it may be a little different for them too. But like, there's not like a lot of the stuff that we I mean, almost all the stuff that we went down. There's not defined anything, man. Like from as far as sign goes. I mean, we walked like probably a few thousand acres, you know, of habitat there, and you know, he's saying like, well, we couldn't really tell if they were on top of the ridge or not. And that's because like trails are not well defined back in there that often. And the place we hunted this year, there's not defined trails in there really. Like there's a couple little trails, and now that we know there's deer there, we look at it and we go, that's the trail. You can see it, but when you walk through there the first time, it's not defined enough to really go, I think there's a bunch of deer using that or whatever.
And that's kind of like touching on something that is, you know, a little bit of that lost art stuff, the woodsmanship stuff, you know, like, okay, we can all see a set, like a family group of does who make their tracks straight through this, you know, strip of mud, and like, oh, that's a deer trail. But, you know, if you can get to the point, and I'm not saying I am, but I can kind of see it now, like you're talking about, like you can see the way the grass lays, and, you know, for instance, like, okay, here's a licking branch here, there's a rub there, and there's a rub up yonder, you know, like, once you kind of start piecing those things together, you can kind of you know how you can add layers on some maps and stuff. If you can start adding those, like that deer layer in your mind to the terrain that you're looking at, and you start looking for those specific things, you can become really more in tune to what's going on.
Right. We spent time doing that out there. Like, I felt like we learned a lot and began to observe together a lot more what was going on as in fine details. And because there's just not big details. You're not going to see that highway, going down the middle of a, strip of, ash trees or whatever. And if you do, it's probably hogs. And it's like, well, crap,
exactly.
It doesn't help you out much. And you can tell because there's mud on every tree down the side of it.
Exactly. A deer couldn't even rub a tree because the hogs were covered up with mud the next day.
Right. And so, and I will make this point that you are one of the most observant people that I've ever met in my life.
Well, thanks, man.
And not just like in a deer hunting aspect, but just getting to know you, like just anything. We could just be doing normal stuff. But like, I literally cannot spot a rub or a scrape before KC will spot it. And he's walking in front of me most of the time because he knows the land and he's got a good idea. And I'm kind of letting him bust the vines out, and stuff for me and give me a good trail to walk through. But really, he'll be like, "Oh, there's a rub right there," and we'll be heading that direction. I'll be like, "I don't see it. And we're still walking. I'm looking. That sucker was like 60 yards away. Like, how'd you see that? But anyway, like, and then so we go from rubs and scrapes to now, like Casey's like, you can tell something walked down this trail like this morning because the leaves are kind of messed up or whatever, and you can tell. I mean, when you start to look at it, you really can tell, but. This is a big subject right now for a lot of people, but like because of trail cameras, we kind of do lose that woodsmanship.
Oh yeah,
we think, well, let's just rely on what's hopping on our trail camera. We don't have to know a whole lot about that buck track, or is that a buck track or is that a doe track? Is there something walking down this trail? Is that that little spot right there that's like indented but covered with leaves, was that a scrape in October? Yeah, it was, because there's a licking branch. You can see it's broken off. Those are little things that you may not see.
And a little side point to that, like we saw a couple scrapes, one that was still active, which was kind of neat for us here this time of year, and a few more that were old. And then we saw that one that had a really good licking branch on it, and there actually was like a 2-inch divot in the dirt below it, which, that tells me that's a perennial scrape that like year in, year out for who knows how long the deer have been using that as a marker post, and so you can pretty much bet every year at that place there's going to be a scrape and there's going to be deer using that area, as opposed to like, I kind of feel like, especially down there, the dinks run around and they're kind of frustrated because they can't get a girlfriend, and they might, I'm going to make a licking branch right here and make a scrape. You know what I mean? Like out of nowhere, but it's not like a signpost,
right.
As opposed to.
It may not even be like a travel route.
No. And that's the other problem. Like, dude, we found some rubs that were like, there's no way, there was no trail anywhere around that. You know what I mean? And that's just like, East Texas is so perplexing, and it's fun because of that, because it's just, it's not like, the only two places I've really hunted are East Texas and Colorado. You know that. And when you hunt Colorado, elk make highways. You know what I mean? Like that, and that's what I've hunted. I haven't hunted mule deer. I've hunted elk. And you can always tell, okay, well, here's the trail, and there's a bunch of busted up aspens and, spruces and up through here, and here they are. Well, here it's just so much different. And it's cool. It's challenging, and I, really enjoy it. But, anyways, I got off on a tangent, but yeah.
Well, it is really tough around here to distinguish like good sign, and it's really tough to like find good sign. And we've found pockets of good sign, and I think that those are obviously pockets that we want to hang trail cameras a lot of times and stuff like that. But like one thing that kind of perplexes me is like. Figuring out bedding. We've talked about this a lot. And why is there a group of 5 rubs here, and then the next 500 acres there's not a single rub? And so like these are 2 things that I want to hit on. Let's hit on the bedding in a second, so remind me of that in just a second. But the first one I want to hit on is, so I kind of maybe hit on this earlier, but like between 2 miles and a mile back, as we were coming back, it was river bottom and stuff like that. and pretty flat, and ash trees, elm trees, cottonwoods, and tons of this like 2-3 foot tall grass that had like a seed head on it. I don't know what kind of grass it was, but anyway, there was like for a mile there was like no sign for deer. I mean, there was hog beds everywhere. There was hog trails here and there, mud on sticks, hog prints everywhere, and I mean, we literally did not see a rub. And then we get 3/4 of a mile from the truck, and we see like several rubs, like in the same type habitat, maybe just slightly different. But I mean, that flat river bottom right next to the river habitat, and there's like sign everywhere. And we're getting like 1/4 mile from the truck, and there's still rubs. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here, And these are things like, I don't know. This may be like why also KC sees more things than me. And this may be one way that we maybe complement each other too. But like, I'm a little bit like, I just am totally thinking the whole time. I'm just like, man, and I'm thinking about, like, you may be thinking, I don't know, but I'm just thinking maybe that you're thinking that, like, I'm looking at this tree, where's the next rub, where's the next scrape, whatever, I'm just looking for sign, and I'm back there in the back, like, trying to analyze this situation, like, what the heck is going on here,
Yeah.
And I'm probably an idiot for it, but, like...
No, I mean, deer don't do things out of randomness, I don't think, unless they're, them young dinks that just trying to, when we were all 13, we kind of didn't know what we were doing either.
Yeah, it's pretty random at that time.
Exactly.
I don't want to go back to that age.
No, I'm much happier at this point in life. And, essentially, it's kind of a neat analogy. Like, we have our daily activities as adults right now, and we have what we do, and that's what we do. Deer the same way. And there's a reason behind everything we do. And so, assuming that those were... par mature bucks, 3.5, 4.5-year-old deer making those rubs, which a lot of them were, bigger trees. Which,
there was some decent rubs.
Some decent stuff. And even if they weren't, there's, bucks in the area either way. There's got to be a reason. And I think that what me and you've talked a lot about is walking around down there, the terrain is real similar, especially when you're talking about fauna. Flora. Right? Sorry. I didn't even watch I don't know. The trees and stuff. Yeah. How about that? How's that sound? Trying to not get too fancy.
Sounds great.
Trees and grass and leaves.
Cat, dog.
Yeah. But, so we feel like in that area, there's not like one specific food source, and deer have to cover a ton of ground to eat. Well, maybe... there is, and we're overlooking it, and that's why that's there, and that sign's there. Or it might be a thing where, there might be a formula, and probably not, but like, the cover has to be so thick, and deer will stick there. And to the naked eye, we might not be able to tell there's a difference in the thickness of the cover, because whenever you look up when you're in the river bottom, most of the time it's a washout of just crap, just brush and trees. You know what I mean? And I feel like I have decent depth perception, and you probably do too. It's kind of something you attain as a hunter. It's just something you work on. But our sensors are nowhere near as good as a deer's is, and it might be a deal where, like, okay, so there's only 17 trees in this square 10 yards with 37 bushes, and that's not thick enough. You know what I mean? And it's, what I'm getting at here, that sounds dumb, but like what I'm getting at is it might be a defined line to a deer that we can't see. Right. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because Jeff Sturgis, when I'm listening to him today, he's talking about stem counts. Yeah. Which is like, I guess, I don't know, but I guess like, whoever, I don't know if they're biologists or whoever would study that, but they study like actual number of like woody stems per acre or whatever.
Whoa, that's cool.
That's what I assumed he was talking about, but he was talking about like opening up the canopy is in like maybe hinge cutting or something like that and creating more stem count in that area. So it could be, I don't know, it might be grasses too, but like essentially having more stem count in that area, may create bedding or whatever. So kind of cool little side note there.
It is. And I mean, and on that note, like, it's a 3-dimensional wall, you know, when you look at stuff like that, and it, you know, about 50 yards out, it's just a wash. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really see much further than that. It's just a bunch of sticks and stuff. And
unless it's you looking at a rub from 60 yards.
Yeah, it's true. Get down at the deer's level is what you got to do.
It's like freaky sometimes.
But, like, so there might be something that we walked completely by right there and missed because it was just out of our line of sight. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so what that means is, like, we did our recon there, saw the rubs, and we're like, okay, well, we need to go back and we're like, explore that a little bit more. And part of the reason, like, we didn't that day is because we had wives and they were ready for us to be home. So we
were overdue for sure.
We put that one on the docket.
We put some time in, dude. It was fun. We I don't know, but not to like hammer, you know, like to beat a dead horse here or anything, but like I just could not figure out after all the things that I've heard, like we are a mile to 2 miles back and not seeing any rubs. And then also when we get to get close to the truck and there's rubs everywhere. And I'm like, you know, guys have been hunting this all year and there's rubs in here. And a few of them look like they might be fresh. You know, I've been hit within the last 3 weeks or so. And I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, dude, they say once you get past a mile, you start to leave a lot of people. And I'm like, we were much farther past a mile at some points, and we just were not seeing any rubs back there. And so it was just weird to me. And like you said, it probably has to do with stem count or food sources or whatever. But
it might be a thing too where, okay, so public land's pressured, okay, but it comes in waves. And there might be a deal where this year, you know, we didn't hunt that area this year, and it was a new area for us, and we went in there and explored it, you know, postseason. It's kind of what we wanted to do. And in the past, I've been in that area a lot, and it received a lot of pressure for hunting and other, you know, pressure's pressure. Humans are humans, and deer don't like to be around humans. And this little area we're in, there's a lot of people going there and fish. Who knows? There might be people in there. I mean, there's a ton of waterfowl hunters, you know, in that area. And maybe this year, for some reason, there wasn't as much human pressure there, and it might be that way. And next year, who knows? There might be a ton of guys in there. You know what I mean? And maybe every fella that walks through there sees the same rubs we do, and then they like, oh, we got to come back here next year. You know what I mean? And then they push those deer out, and then they end up being a mile or two back in. Yeah. You know, so
there's just
it's kind of like a thing where this preseason or postseason scouting on public it's beneficial in concept, but maybe not quite as beneficial in actuality. And we'll have to just see if that proves true. You know, like go back and see, you know, if you have season in, season out deer sign in the same areas, or if it's a constant rotation, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, kind of to move forward a little bit here, we did end up rehanging your camera, and we moved it quite a ways back towards the truck to pretty good spot or what we feel like is a pretty good spot, and what we think might be it's hard to tell, I think, until you maybe get some camera intel and you can start to put together the pieces of puzzle. But we think it could possibly be doe bedding in an area where looks like a buck maybe skirting the edge of the doe bedding and making some rubs and stuff like that on a certain wind, or it might be like I'm hitting on this a lot, and so don't get mad at me for saying this, but Jeff Sturgis,
he's the man.
I'm listening. I do like him, man. But I'm listening to him today, and he's talking about he's got two different staging areas. There's one for like food staging, and then there's one for bed staging, he calls it. So like he says, he thinks that when a buck comes out of the bed, and all these guys that I listen to, like they all talk like matter of factly. Probably because that's their job and they need people to believe that what they say is the truth. But I'm sure a lot of them, you know, see tendencies, but sometimes there's gray area there. Anyway, that's a side note. But so he says that these bedding areas is where a buck will get up and move out of the bedding area into the first little, what he feels like is a little safe area just outside of his bedding area, and he'll tend to make a lot of rubs. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, that place that we hung that camera might be that too. You know, never know. Or it could just be buck bedding right there. You know, and he's making, I don't know. You know, he's bedding on the edge of that thicket or whatever. I don't know, but we found 2 areas that were similar. And the other one was pretty close to where you hung your camera and where we saw some conspicuous things going on. And kind of had that whole like cedar bedding area kind of type deal going on, what we think, and rubs and stuff like that. And so these 2 pockets kind of had something similar going on there. We saw a little bit of a pattern. So we hung the camera on this other area. And I'm really excited about going back to check that one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's back in there pretty far, but
it's in a cool spot. And, you know, something, I can't remember who it was I was listening to, but it might have even been the guy you're talking about with big woods hunting. When you're hunting a place like that, you have to look for the unconspicuous funnels because the real, like, you know, the funnels you can see from an aerial aren't there all the time. You know what I mean? Because, like, you go to some places here and some places in the Midwest, you've got, you know, 2 square blocks of timber and they connected at a corner. Well, hello, you know where they're going to come, you know, where the deer are going to go. Well, if you're hunting in the middle of big woods and the deer have no reason to leave that big woods, you got to figure out where the funnel is there. And that's kind of what that place is. But like we found a spot where the creek bed comes real close to that cedar thicket. And right in there, you know, along where that border is where those rubs are.
Yeah. And it's not obvious at all on the aerial, really, you know, like, and even for us, like we've really spent some time trying to break this stuff down and to learn from others who are doing well and having success on public land. And even for us, I mean, at least for me, I can speak for myself that when I look at a map, like of a place in anywhere in the eastern half of Texas, and I look at a public land map, or it could be anything, I mean, but I'm not looking for private stuff that's in Texas unless it's around local, you know. But I can look at that map and it just is almost like a big overwhelming block of timber almost always, you know. And so like you gotta definitely like fine tooth comb it and start to break it down little by little and look at the details, and then you got to look at it 2 or 3 more times before things stick out to you sometimes. But
exactly.
But we definitely found a spot where I don't think that you're going to sit there and go, well, that's the spot right there necessarily. I mean, anybody really, unless you see it, and then you're definitely going to want to go in there and check it out. And it's a long ways back in there for a guy who may or may not have time or the drive to do that, you know? So I think it'd be in a really good spot for us to get away from most people.
Yeah.
Most people. I have an idea about somebody who might want to be in there, but anyway.
You know, you're talking about how it's a blank wash. I figured out that right there is where the transition from using Google Maps on your phone and really getting on a laptop or PC and looking at the Google Earth seasonal images makes a huge difference, because every species of grass, tree, whatever is going to leaf out and green up at different points in time, you know, and not all places, but a lot of places you'll have some spring images, some summer images, and fall images, and then you'll be able to go back and compare weather data or just memory and say, okay, so this was a wet year, this is a dry year, and that's why it looks different here and there and whatever, and you can really start to see what in April everything looks like a big green mat. You know, it looks like a golf green for, you know, it's just blown up.
Yep.
And but if you go to like February, you can see where the evergreens are.
Right.
If you go to like October, you can see where like the hickories are, because they always get like super yellow, and you can tell, oh, that's a hickory tree right away. And then like if you go to February as well, like you can tell the oaks, because they look, you can actually see, it looks like a big gray skeleton. You can see the branches, and it's not like a river ash or whatever. That's just like, you know, just looks like scrubby
wispy
stuff. Yeah, wispy looking nothing. So, you know, that really helps. And then when you do that as well, you can tell like where there's sometimes creek bottoms that you couldn't, or creek beds rather, that you couldn't see before, because you'll have the bigger trees like those oaks and stuff, or maybe boardwalks or whatever, will be along those creeks, and you can, you know, just start to see different stuff. So, you know, just that's a little tip there.
Yeah, that's a good tip for sure. You brought my attention to that this fall.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, that could be very handy. So is there anything else you want to talk about on this subject, or about the trip that before we move on? We saw some big woodpeckers. Those were cool.
We did. Pileated woodpeckers, the largest living woodpecker in existence. There used to be one called the ivory-billed woodpecker, but has since been declared extinct by probably the National Audubon Society or whoever declares those things. But yeah. Anyways,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen. I don't know if I've
it
ever
was a
really
deer.
seen one. Oh man, it was like 100. Thanks, man. It was like 100 yards up in there, and it flies in between these two trees before it disappears.
Yeah.
Like really quickly. And I was like, that's
giant.
either a hog or a deer.
Yeah.
because the thing is like size of a crow. Mm-hmm. And but we got a little bit closer to them. There's two of them. I guess probably mating or something. I don't know when they mate.
Hanging out, being bros or something.
Yeah, that might be the case
Yeah,
too. So that was cool, but.
Yeah, that's it. Well, maybe just one more thing on the deer that we figured out, or maybe not figured out, but just observed. I would say 75% of the rubs we saw were on cedar trees.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a product of the cedar trees being bedding and the deer go to that area and they just happen, well, hey, that's the tree that's here, I'm going to rub on it.
Milling around.
If they enjoy the smell and the the
feeling,
sappiness of it or maybe it's better at raking the velvet off if it's actual velvet rub as opposed to rut rub or whatever. Yeah. I don't know, but it's just something that we're going to kind of observe and store in our minds, and maybe there's something to it.
That's the way it is in Kansas a lot too. There's a lot probably majority on cedars there too.
Mm-hmm.
We get some on just little they hit locust trees there quite a bit, but I think the majority is probably on cedars there in Kansas too. So that's a little note, I guess. There, maybe that's kind of a thing across the country. I don't know. Hadn't hunted a ton of states, but been to a few and seen lots of cedar.
Well,
rubs.
ever since growing up, I always kind of imagined, or not imagined, but just like that's one of the first thing I keyed in on as a deer hunter, like 7 or 8. Like if I saw a cedar tree walking through the woods, I was going to walk over and see if there's a rub on it.
Right.
And like you kind of always thought about that, but like it really was super apparent this weekend that's what the deer were rubbing on. Mm-hmm. So kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely cool, man. So I guess we probably need to move on and quickly just talk about what we've been doing.
Yeah,
and
what we've been doing.
We've been cooking some venison. I do know that. I did a back strap from the doe I shot in October a couple months ago, a couple days ago, maybe a week ago or so. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I apparently was thinking, pretty smartly actually, and cut it into like a 2 serving size deal or whatever. And my wife and I ate it. Salt, pepper, and olive oil. That was it. And I let it thaw out really good and set it out kind of a few hours before I cooked it. And then I heated up a cast iron skillet on the stove and just put it on high. And I was like, I'm going to sear the mess out of this thing. And I put it on the stove, and I don't have like a vent hood or anything in my house. And I'm talking like could barely see into my living room. It was just like billowing smoke out of it. And I flipped it over, a couple minutes later, whatever, and just got it good and crispy and browned on the sides, both sides. And then it was a little bit raw, and so I took it off and slid it in the oven. And I had the oven about 350 or so. Probably wasn't quite there when I put it in, but put it in there for a few minutes, and I actually overdid it a little bit. I didn't have my meat thermometer because my wife couldn't find it, so it was actually hers. But I didn't have the meat thermometer, and anyway, I overcooked it a little bit. I'm a medium rare kind of guy, but it was still really, really good.
Yeah.
And then the other night, was it Friday?
Friday night, the great blizzard of 2017.
Dude, it was so cold.
Golly, we made some frozen fajitas. They actually were pretty nice and tasty and sizzling.
They were, man. You knocked it out of the park.
So, like, you helped a lot too, man. But it was good eating. And that was with elk. That elk that I killed in September, I've talked about a few times. And there's kind of two things that I enjoy or see as points of eating wild game. And we might get a little bit into hippie talk, which is okay.
It's always good here.
It's always good to have the hippie talk every once in a while. There's the subsistence part of the eating, which I participate in a lot this year because I've been blessed with the elk. So we're able to pretty much live off of game that I've shot this year, which doesn't always happen for us. Whitetail in Texas are little, so you got to kill a lot of them to be able to eat them a lot. And so with that elk, I get to participate in that. And then there's the connection to the wild and, wild harvest and the ability to go out and take an animal's life and participate in what nature does every day, and you become a part of nature, and that's kind of the cool part. And then, there's a lot of cultures believe that you absorb the powers or natural abilities of things that you eat. And I'm not going to say I believe that, but it's kind of like that, I don't know, cool thought pattern.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I've heard your elk bugle from your mouth, and it's pretty good.
I'm going to go ahead and just eat elk just to be safe. And, so like maybe I could absorb their smell, how good they can smell, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just in case. But, so you got that going on too. And it's really nice. Like, it's so cool to be able to, I'm not going to say I'll live off the land by any means because I got a pantry full of canned goods in there. But, then you can, I know
take
you
part in that a little bit, though.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of what you're more on because, Tyler was too cool to go elk hunting with me this year, so he didn't get to come go get him one. But next year, man.
It was definitely not because I was too cool. That's for sure.
But
I was too poor.
You kind of are going with that whole, like, I'm going to take this doe because it's a gift, and I'm going to treat it as good as I can and use every part of it that I can and make it delicious and do justice to the meat kind of thing. And that's super cool because, like, I know that you don't have like really a culinary background or anything. You didn't grow up cooking as much from what you've told me.
Yeah. My mom was a fantastic chef, not chef, but cook.
Yeah.
And so I didn't ever cook for myself,
Yeah, exactly. But, and it's been cool to watch you like take these, risks with, you cooked a dish last night that I didn't even know how to pronounce. And I feel like I'm kind of into the culinary arts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm definitely a foodie, and not afraid to try a whole lot. And I'm into it. I just haven't had a lot of time. I haven't been home in the last 9 or 10 years of my life very much. Traveled quite a bit, but, I'm starting to finally take part in that a little bit more, and hopefully will, especially once we get moved. And I did cook a dish last night called it's a French dish, I guess, called a carbonade, and it's got a beer-based like stew in it or whatever, and it was so good. I cooked a lot of the leg meat, and it had the it has the tendons and the sinew and the silver skin and stuff, and I was just feeling bad because I was like, man, I cannot cut this stuff off without like there being nothing left of this doe, this little doe that I shot, And so Hank Shaw, I cooked it out of Hank Shaw's recipe book, Buck Moose, which just came out. Cool book.
Christmas present?
Christmas present.
Dude, y'all, Tyler loaded it up this Christmas. He did well for himself.
Yeah, I took notes all throughout the year so people could really, I'm like, I need one of those. So I got a lot of stuff I needed. But anyway, I did this dish, and Hank Shaw had talked about, I'd heard him talk about, how these tendons and stuff, they break down when you cook them low and slow, and I was like, there's no way. There's no way that it's not chewy and at least a little bit. And I cooked this dish, and it didn't really taste like beer, which was good.
That's good, yeah.
And then B, it was like eating just tender meat. It was almost like you would have thought I threw backstrap in there. There was no, like, it didn't come to a tendon that I couldn't chew through or any piece of silver skin that was like really tough or anything. It was just like, I was so excited just because I was like, I can do this now. I can, break down my own meat and not feel bad about it, So that was good. We enjoyed that, and apparently it gets better every day, just like any stew or chili. So I'm gonna probably enjoy some tonight or tomorrow night as well.
Tonight.
So
yeah, I actually ate leftover elk chili for lunch today.
Yeah,
I made that on Thursday, and dude, it was so good today. It was just man.
Well, the elk stuff, we've got plenty of meat there, so we're going to be doing a lot of cooking with that.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we're probably going to do some heart sometime.
Yeah, man.
I'm looking forward to that.
That
big
should be
time.
pretty tasty. And I mean, it gets kind of cliche to be like the guys who eat weird stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to eat this weird thing. But like, elk heart's not a weird thing. It's a delicious thing.
That's what I hear.
It's not like we're like, I'm going to go in there and eat his earlobes. You know
like,
what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's something good.
It's like a lean steak from what I understand.
Yeah, man. And it's
somewhat.
super good. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's got this perfect little happy medium of slightly chewy but super tender all at the same time, and it's a lot like, well, what's that? There's one specific type of Mexican steak that you can make that kind of has that same texture or whatever, you know. But it's just the right amount of chewy with the right amount of tender and the right amount of goodness.
Yeah,
let's just say goodness.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah.
I think it really, just thinking about it, I think it could really be good. So we're gonna do something with that. But in the meantime, we do have a video that's gonna release pretty soon. That we did with the fajitas the other night. We just tried to produce up a pretty cool little video that kind of showed you what we were doing, the process, maybe get some tips on cooking. We're going to put that video out and release it pretty soon, probably, just so you can kind of see what we're doing. And we'll probably do a few cooking videos here and there.
We're going to put that on YouTube channel, is that the plan?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So if you want to check that out, you can go to our YouTube channel, and we've already got one video up, and we're hoping to just continue to put out really good video content.
All those cooking videos and stuff, we'll like try to do a synopsis of the recipe, and then like what we season the meat with or whatever. We're not going to break it down, now you slice the peppers, we're not doing that. But, we'll tell you kind of like what we season the fajita meat with and, how long you cook it and whatever method was or whatever, and kind of, because I like the idea of really helping people along, not to say everybody needs help, but there's a lot of people that think, man, I killed a deer, it's time to make some deer poppers. Well, nothing wrong with deer poppers. They're tasty.
Yeah.
But there's so many more cool things you can do with venison besides either make jalapeno deer poppers or put it in
burger.
Hamburger meat or, honestly, y'all, like we have been missing out our whole lives because we fry up the back straps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
Let's fry up some hindquarters or something. Back straps are too good to do that with, like once you really get to appreciate the meat and goodness. But, that's kind of what I kind of foresee, like the YouTube cooking stuff going, like just, kind of help people explore their options to make it more of a daily consumption thing.
And the fajitas it was an easy, quick process, man. I mean, you buy tortillas, you buy bell pepper and some onions, slice it up, salt or season the fajitas up or the meat, cook it, slice it, and you're done.
That's it, man.
Rice and beans.
That's it.
Whatever. So it's a good deal, man. But we're gonna get out of here before it gets too long on you guys. One thing I do want to say is that I really wish I was at the ATA show.
Yeah.
But that's all right. We're not there. But if we see any cool stuff happening that comes out from that or whatever, and think that you guys might have missed it by any chance, then we may update you on that next time around. So I'd like to say thanks to Sitka again for just believing in what we're doing. And if you would be so kind to go give us a review on iTunes, a good review, man, that would really help us spread the word and just be good for the podcast, help us out financially, hopefully eventually, and so that we can keep bringing this thing to you. So also check us out on Instagram and at Facebook and on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, and follow. And I guess that'll wrap it up for me and KC from both of us. Thank you guys so much. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.